The morning sun of Kaldros Prime cast crimson shadows across the warrior city of Thexkar. Maltida stood at the entrance of the human embassy, her hand resting gently on the shoulder of a small Vrex child. The creature's scales shimmered purple in the dawn light, its triple rows of teeth visible as it yawned. Behind the first child stood 6 more, all younglings of the Vrex, the galaxy's most feared apex predators. "Ready for school?" Maltida asked softly, adjusting the small backpack on the nearest cub's shoulders. The Vrex child nodded, its vertical pupils dilating with what Maltida had learned to recognize as nervousness. These children, despite belonging to a species that had conquered 47 star systems through sheer martial prowess, were still just children. And today was their first day at the newly established Interspecies Education Center. Oscar emerged from the embassy, his diplomatic uniform crisp despite the early hour. "The road is secure," he said, though concern flickered in his eyes. "But Maltida, you don't have to do this yourself. We can arrange armored transport." Maltida shook her head, her brown hair catching the light. "They're walking to school, Oscar, like children should. Like I did back on Earth, like every human child deserves to do." She paused. Like every child deserves to do, no matter their species. The Vrex had been humanity's enemies for 3 years. 3 long years of brutal warfare across the Outer Rim. The Vrex fought with claws and fangs and an honor code that made them predictable, yet terrifying. They took no prisoners and gave no quarter. Humanity had responded with tactics, technology, and something the Vrex had never encountered: mercy. The war had ended 6 months ago, not with humanity's surrender, but with a treaty. A treaty that had shocked the entire Galactic Council. The humans had won decisively at the Battle of Arcturus Gate, had the Vrex Armada surrounded and helpless. And then humanity had done the unthinkable. They had let them go. Not just let them go. They had offered medical aid, food supplies, and safe passage home. They had offered peace. The Vrex Warlord Council had been confused, suspicious, then finally intrigued. What kind of species shows mercy to those who showed them none? What kind of predator spares a defeated enemy? The kind, Maltida had explained during the negotiations, that understands the difference between warriors and children, between soldiers and civilians, between war and peace. Now, as part of the cultural exchange program that Oscar had helped design, 7 Vrex cubs were being integrated into the new school in Thexkar. Their parents, high-ranking warriors all, had initially refused. The shame of their children learning alongside the offspring of conquered species was too great, until Maltida had volunteered to walk them to school herself. "Shall we?" she asked the cubs, extending her hands. The smallest one, no higher than her waist, took her hand with a clawed grip that was surprisingly gentle. They began walking. The streets of Thexkar were already filling with morning activity. Vrex warriors, their scales marked with battle honors, stopped to watch as the human female walked past with their most precious cargo. The cubs walked in a small cluster around Maltida, their young eyes wide with wonder at the city their parents called home. Oscar walked beside her, his hand near his sidearm out of habit. But he needn't have worried. From the first intersection, a Vrex warrior fell into step behind them. He was massive, even by Vrex standards, his scales bearing the deep purple of a Bloodclaw veteran. His name was Krexnor, and his daughter was one of the cubs holding Maltida's hand. At the second intersection, 2 more warriors joined. Then 5, then a dozen. Maltida didn't turn around, but she could hear them. The soft click of claws on stone, the rustle of ceremonial armor, the deep rhythmic breathing of apex predators moving in formation. "Maltida," Oscar whispered, his voice tight. "We have company." "I know," she replied calmly. "It's all right." By the time they reached the market square, over 100 Vrex warriors walked behind them. Shopkeepers emerged from their stalls. Civilians stopped and stared. The cubs began to notice, looking back with confusion and growing pride. The youngest cub, the one holding Maltida's hand, squeaked in the Vrex language. "Father is here." "I know, sweetheart," Maltida said. She had learned enough Vrex to understand. They all are. The school was another 10 minutes away. With each block, more warriors joined the procession. Young warriors. Old warriors. Males and females. Some bore scars from the war with humanity. All bore the honor marks of their clans. Oscar leaned close. "Do you understand what's happening?" Maltida smiled. "I think so." Among the Vreks there was an ancient tradition. When a warrior's cub was entering a new phase of life, a new clan, a new training ground, a new world, the warrior's closest brothers and sisters in arms would walk with the family as witnesses. It was called the Path of Pride, but this was unprecedented. These warriors weren't just walking with their own cubs. They were walking behind Maltita, a human, their former enemy, the female who had insisted their children deserved to walk to school with dignity rather than be transported in secrecy. The school finally came into view. Its architecture blended Vrek's tradition with modern design, all sharp angles and proud towers. Other children were arriving. Keltari younglings with their translucent skin, Morphean grubs carried by their attendants, and even a few human children from the embassy. At the school gates, Maltita stopped. The 7 Vreks cubs clustered around her, suddenly nervous again. Behind her, the sound of hundreds of warriors coming to a halt was like thunder rolling across the square. She knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with the cubs. "You're going to do wonderfully," she told them. "Learn everything you can. Make friends, be kind, and remember, courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway." The smallest cub, Krexnor's daughter, suddenly wrapped her arms around Maltita's neck. The gesture was clumsy. Vreks weren't natural huggers, but the emotion was clear. "Will you be here when school ends?" "Every day," Maltita promised. "I'll walk you home every single day." One by one, the cubs headed toward the school entrance. Teachers, a mix of species, including 2 Vreks educators, waited to receive them. Maltita stood and watched them go, her heart full. Oscar placed a hand on her shoulder. That was incredible. Before Maltita could respond, a deep voice rumbled behind her. She turned to find Krexnor, the massive warrior, standing at attention. He struck his chest with his fist, a Vrek salute, and spoke in carefully practiced English. "You honor our cubs, human Maltita. You honor us." Then in a wave that spread through the assembled crowd, every warrior present struck their chests. The sound was like a thunderclap. The Path of Pride salute, given not to one of their own, but to her. Maltita felt tears prick her eyes. She returned the gesture as best she could, fist to chest. "The honor is mine." As the warriors dispersed, returning to their duties, Oscar and Maltita began the walk back to the embassy. The streets were buzzing with conversation. Word would spread quickly. The human who walked the predator cubs to school, the warriors who followed her in honor. "You've changed something fundamental here today," Oscar said quietly. "You know that, right?" Maltita shrugged. "I just walked some kids to school." "No," Oscar corrected. "You showed them what humanity really means. Not our weapons or our tactics, our values. Our belief that every child deserves protection, education, and dignity." He paused. "Even the children of our enemies." "Especially the children of our enemies," Maltita replied. "That's how wars end, Oscar. Not on battlefields, but in schoolyards. Not with weapons, but with understanding." That afternoon, when school ended, Maltita returned. The cubs ran to her with stories of their day, chattering in a mix of Vreks and broken English about new friends and strange lessons. And once again, as she walked them home, warriors fell into step behind her. It would become a daily ritual, a new tradition in the warrior city of Thexkar. Every morning and every afternoon, the human Maltita would walk the predator cubs to and from school. And every morning and every afternoon, the warriors of the city would walk behind her. It was a path of pride unlike any in Vrek's history. And it was just the beginning.